So, when it comes to reboots and remakes, they very often carry the misconception that in order to appeal to a new generation, they must destroy or rewrite what came before. It's as if Hollywood just can't resist taking something beloved and fixing it with a modern lens, which honestly usually means hollowing out its soul, plastering over its themes with political messaging and, well, hoping nostalgia will do the rest. The irony is, these attempts to modernize or reimagine the source material rarely help it find a new audience. The fans who loved the original don't recognize it anymore, and the new viewers the studios are desperate to court rarely stick around. They move on to the next shiny reboot 6 months later. We've seen it happen time and again, from Ghostbusters to The Matrix Resurrections to, I don't know, whatever disaster Disney is currently repainting in live action. But then every once in a while, lightning strikes in just the right place. Not because the formula changed, but because the story grew up with its audience instead of dumbing itself down. Welcome to the Snake Pit, where we're full of bile and venom. I'm your host, Snake Daemon, and today we're looking at one of the rarest things in entertainment, a reboot that actually worked, Battlestar Galactica, 2003. Building from the 2003 miniseries, Battlestar Galactica evolved into one of the defining sci-fi dramas of its era. It chronicled the desperate struggle of the last survivors of the 12 colonies of Kobol after their annihilation by the Cylons. With President Laura Roslin and Commander William Adama at the helm of a ragtag fleet, humanity's remnants flee through space in search of the mythical 13th colony, Earth. Unlike the glossy, camp-laden space operas of old, Battlestar Galactica grounded itself in grit and realism. No laser beams or aliens with rubber foreheads, just railguns, moral compromises, and, well, a slow descent into madness. What made this series stand out wasn't just the war between man and machine, it was the human condition laid bare. The Cylons weren't a faceless enemy, they were our creation, our reflection. The show turned the classic sci-fi trope of the machines have risen into an introspective, almost spiritual journey. Religion, politics, survival, and the cyclic nature of destruction all played major roles. It asked a question most modern reboots are terrified to face. What if we're not the heroes of our own story? Over its 4 seasons, Battlestar Galactica twisted and turned through moral ambiguity and psychological warfare. Both humans and Cylons were forced to face their own hypocrisy, their capacity for cruelty and forgiveness. The Cylon Civil War shattered the concept of a simple good versus evil dynamic, revealing instead a fractured mirror of humanity's own self-destruction. The arc of John Cavill and the Final Five took what could have been lazy lore and turned it into one of the most thought-provoking explorations of faith, identity, and evolution in television. And, add in the mystery surrounding Kara Starbuck Thrace, a soldier, prophet, and eventual enigma, and you've got a story that just refuses to stay inside the lines. When the series reached its conclusion, with humanity abandoning technology and settling on a new Earth to start over, it delivered both closure and commentary. The final scenes, where angelic versions of Bolter and Six walk unseen among modern humans, hammered home the point, all this has happened before. But the question remains, does it have to happen again? A haunting reflection on humanity's inability to learn from its own history. I watched this series when it first aired in the 2000s, having grown up with the campy charm of the 70s original, and I'll admit, Battlestar Galactica hit harder on a rewatch 20 years later. Maybe it's age, or maybe it's just that the show feels even more relevant now than it did back then. What struck me most on the binge watch was how well it holds up, in pacing, tone, and production. Without the weekly weight, the bleak atmosphere becomes bearable, even compelling. Some episodes still drag, sure, But when you can hit next episode instantly, the rough patches fade into the bigger narrative arc. That's the beauty of this show. It was built for reflection. It's grim, yes, but it's honest. It doesn't sugarcoat human nature. The performances were uniformly excellent, Edward James Olmos and Mary McDonnell in particular, grounding the series in humanity even when everything else was falling apart. But it's not perfect. The heavy reliance on visions, projections, and invisible companions occasionally veered into overuse, particularly with characters like Baltar. At first it made sense, a manifestation of guilt, trauma, and delusion. But as it spread to other characters, it began to feel like lazy shorthand for emotional depth. The mysticism also divided fans, with Starbuck's Resurrection standing as one of the most polarizing creative choices in modern sci-fi. Some call it divine intervention. I call it narrative convenience, wrapped in pseudo-spiritual nonsense. That said, Battlestar Galactica is a masterclass in how to do a reboot, respecting the source material, reimagining it with purpose, and never condescending to its audience. It's bleak, intelligent, and unflinchingly human. Where the original was pulpy and episodic, this one was serialized and philosophical. Where the old series handed out morality with a smile, the new one shoved it under a microscope and asked, are we any better than the things we create? In short, it didn't just retell an old story, it transcended it. Battlestar Galactica 2003 remains one of the few examples of a reboot that did what so many others failed to do: evolve. It proved that when handled with respect and intellect, a remake can breathe new life into an old universe instead of burning it down for social clout. 20 years later, it still holds its own against the best of modern sci-fi, both in visual effects and storytelling depth. So maybe the next time Hollywood feels the urge to reimagine something, they should re-watch Battlestar Galactica and remember what happens when you treat your audience like thinkers rather than hashtags. Thanks for dropping by the Snake Pit, where we thrive on untapped potential and lost opportunities. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell, like the video, and leave your opinion in the comments, where naturally I won't read them. Until next time, stay venomous.